Hey all, so this is a update, or I guess introduction for the event Delirium Everywhere. I'm playing it in solo self-found, and the build I'm playing is Poisonous Concoction. It's pretty popular, it seems. I thought it would be a little less popular, but it seems like people caught on to how absolutely broken this ability is. It's just really overtuned, numbers-wise, and it scales pretty well off of nothing. That being said, I did get lucky and I got a tabula in mudflats, so you know it is what it is, right? Um, my current progress is at around level 84. I managed to clear most of the maps so far. I have 45 completion without that many deaths. I think like one or two deaths just to like getting chain CC'd or something, but it's all been really just focused in Act 1, and that was really the biggest hurdle. So I'll go over really quickly how I leveled. I mean, in reality, even without the tabula, you would just run Poisonous Concoction. Um, with three abilities, you would run the Greater Volley, Void Manipulation, GMP, or Vicious instead of Void Manipulation, whichever does more damage. And ideally you get a 5 link from Harvest, which is pretty common. And from there, you just work for a 6 link from div cards, or you can farm Tabula if you so desire. I do not recommend that. For the most part, though, the build functions pretty well even on a 4 link. You can go into yellow maps pretty comfortably, so long as you're not doing heavy Delirium. So the way this event is working, some maps have a certain amount of Delirium, and so you can kind of avoid the ones that have a lot, or like high percent delirious, and that'll make it so that you're not having to deal with sponges of mobs. But other than that, there's not really much you can do. If you want to complete your Alice, or at least like work on it, you still need to run the maps. It would just be wise to probably not clear as much, because the map drops in this so far have been really generous. I mean, I have like 20 of each tier leading up to tier 6, so it's not anything to worry about. So starting off and leveling in Act 1, I started off with Frostblades. I realized really quickly that it just didn't do enough damage, especially to Brutus. And Brutus is kind of the first brick wall that a lot of players will run into. With Ranger, it's kind of weird because you're kind of shoehorned into attack skills, which aren't very effective, and you're going to end up like death running a lot. One workaround to this is playing Trap. So Explosive Trap is what I just quickly picked up. I threw Bear Trap and Explosive Trap on Brutus, kited him through all the walls until he was at the very last room, and just ran around until he died from my traps. That being said, it wasn't an easy kill. It still took a while. But from then on, we had Explosive Concoction, or rather Poisonous Concoction, and the Tabula, which just made life easy. Rolling the rest of the gear was pretty like standard. The helmet I just got by IDing. I've ID'd like every single armor or evasion based helmet, and one eventually hit some nice life, decent resists, so I just rolled with this. This is a really crappy amulet and really crappy annoyance. It's just what oils I had. I plan on farming Baldos a decent bit, so I'll get oils to fix this. I crafted mana regen because this is a really mana intensive build that if you don't play it a certain way, you're going to end up running out of mana quite a bit, and I'll explain that later. Shield, again, just found it. The suppression is really all I care about. It's really nice. Extra block is just icing on the cake, and of course decent life. Ring I found, I mean, very self-explanatory. It has attributes. Same here, just reses life. Standard stuff. Could use more life on this one, but it's really easy to fix. I just need to find one with decent res. These gloves I found pretty early on. Item level CC3. Again, decent life and res. This is really nice. Flask effect is always nice on Pathfinder builds because you basically have flasks up all the time, so you're pretty fast as a Pathfinder. And it makes mapping just a lot faster, and also leveling, which is why I'm 84 already in SSF. And of course boots, I got suppression on them, really low roll, really bad, but it's what I could essentially work with, and these were just crafted. I think I just essence spammed it with like screamings or even less. So for the flasks, you really want the increased amount recovered and reduced recovery rate craft. This is the best one. The only way you get this is alt spamming and praying you don't hit a second mod, so you can Einhard craft Corrupted Blood, because playing this build without Corrupted Blood on means you have to kind of spec up here. Otherwise you're going to get like die to Corrupted Blood quite a decent bit, because your flask isn't going to heal you much, and if you get more than 10 stacks you're just dead. So besides that, as high as you can get for the increased amount recovered is good, because your poisonous concoction will scale off of it. But it doesn't really worth like full on investing, like going for heroic and research. I think until you get a higher item level one, so like item level 82, you'll begin to be able to roll at 70% increased amount recovered, which will take it to around over 5k life recovery, which is your end game flask. The rest of them, you can run 3 defensive flasks if you want. You can run a Quicksilver 2 defensive, Quicksilver 2 damage even if you're playing SSF or just non-hardcore. And the last flask can be another defensive or offensive. I'm running an offensive one. I just found a Witchfire and I'm deciding to use it. But the biggest thing is that you could also run a mana flask, and an enduring mana flask is not necessary at all for this build. But the problem is that
my mana is gone.
I can miss one explosive concoction, and that's it. I miss it, I have a couple seconds where I have nothing, and then I can throw one more. And if that misses, I have very, very little to like actually kill things with, right? So the idea is to just not ever miss with poison concoction. Thanks to Delirium, there's so much on the map that you can just like hit anything and you'll get your mana back from leech. And the leech nodes I'm taking are these 2 right here. It's plenty for the sake of this build, and all you're really doing is stacking up your Plague Bearer plague stacks, and once you get those up you can literally just pop it and run around. I'm running it with life tap along with shield charge and life tap because I just don't want to worry about the mana, but this isn't really necessary. It's just quality of life. That being said, minus mana cost on rings and amulets will help immensely with this problem. It's definitely not, it doesn't feel great, and there's not as much mana regen on the tree that you can get at all, so your best bet is to really just get those ring crafts and just work from there. But the build itself is actually really fast. Again, you just stack Plague Bearer and you can run around without ever clicking any other abilities. You can like Withering Step and just wither everything, take more damage, and it's a really smooth build in that sense. But at the same time, it also handles Delirium pretty well because of Poison Prolif from Pathfinder. So with the Pathfinder tree, I sort of pathed down over this way. You can path down this way and grab block nodes down here. I'm not a big fan of that. I've tried it in the other temp league and I didn't like it as much. This one is definitely a bit more comfortable. This is for really like mana life flasks. I could actually unspec this right now, but I don't really have a better node to spec, so I'm keeping a spec there. As far as ascendancies go, I got Uber Lab Ascended just recently. I personally like to take this first when leveling because it just gives you so much more damage and you just start one-shotting bosses. Then you come up here for flash duration and stuff, as well as flash charges, and this will just allow you to actually use your skill more with the life flash charges. The Master Toxicist is the one after that. This will help you with mapping because this is the Poison Prolif one. And it kind of lines up well because once you start mapping, there will be a lot more mobs and this will proc more. And then finally, the attack speed and move speed is just kind of quality of life, which helps out with mapping and some bosses. You can still sustain a decent bit of attacks on bosses, but again, the mana cost is kind of the thing that holds this build back a little bit in terms of like full damage output, but it's something that is completely fixable. I just need to do more Syndicate. As far as other pathing on the tree, you have access to this cluster node, and with Delirium everywhere, obviously you can get the large clusters. I don't have one yet, but that's likely the plan because I still have 16 levels. But I'm only really going to go for a large cluster and maybe use a small cluster or just use 2 jewels. It's not really worth getting any other ones. Conquer's efficiency, the replica version, is always a viability. Like, you can run that, but it's obviously not easy to get. And it's all self-found, so I'm not really going to go for that. And then finally, with accuracy, it's always nice to have accuracy. I would recommend pathing down here. It's pretty efficient because you're going to be stacking dexterity from Mage Bane anyways. But getting this dexterity node just makes your poison proc more because you need to actually hit them to proc the poison. Besides that though, I'm running Grace Determination, Defiance Banner, and Tempest Shield. So I have a lot of defensive auras and really no offensive. Herald of Agony is another option if you don't want to run Tempest Shield, but I decided that I don't really need the damage, and when there's so much stuff hitting me, having some block chance is really nice. And this is enough to cover like a lot of attacks, especially the small ones that constantly come from Delirium. In this event, if you want to get XP, I highly recommend pathing from Glenesh up to Haywark and then to Valdos if you're planning on playing this like deep into red maps. You'll get a lot of sulfites from those red maps in Valdos Rest, and you'll essentially just delve for XP. That is going to be your best bet if you want to hit 100. That being said, I think this is a very cheesy league, and it's not worth racing for like 100 or whatever. It's not something I'm interested in. It's very boring because you're literally just doing one thing, and that's delve. And so instead, I'm just trying to max a little bit more. The reason why I path up here second after Glenesh is because of Syndicate safe houses. There's a lot of good crafts I can get from here too, which is my plan. You can also go for Harvest and Essences if you need to craft gear fast, and you can start here too and work towards Valdos if you don't plan on pushing red maps, which is also an option. Finally, for Lyra, I'm going to be taking Exotic Goods. If you're ever looking to push into T14s and 16s, the Exotic Goods is a really strong Atlas node because the invasion bosses can drop T14s to 16s as their sort of rare item, and it happens quite a decent bit, so it's definitely a way to sustain your maps more. I don't know if this is necessary in this temp league because there's just so many map drops, but it's still something I'm planning on anyways. Currently in yellow maps, and I think I'm going to keep playing this league. I don't know how far I can make it with this build, just because of the fact that the damage scaling comes at a cost of a lot of defenses unless you like have a bunch of harvests to craft with. So I would really have to just play around with clusters and hope I can get the right crafts on them. But yeah, until next time, bye.